What's going on, guys? Today we're heading out on Lake Superior. We're going to be using some conventional techniques today, but also some more unconventional techniques to troll. And I'm also going to kind of go over 10 different tips to kind of get you going on Lake Superior if you haven't fished up here much. Just kind of 10 things that Kyle and I have learned over the years of fishing up here that are kind of unique to Lake Superior. So let's get out there, let's get some lines in the water, catch some fish, and hopefully get you some good information on the biggest lake on the planet.
Tip number one, from what I've found, it's a great idea to go back and forth in multiple directions, not just set your heading and go one direction the whole day, especially if you're not getting bites. If you're not getting bites but you're marking fish, you're seeing bait, you think you're in the right area, it's a great idea to loop around and go back through those fish. Sometimes they just want it a different direction or a different speed because of the current. And so yeah, that's number one, is just circle around and fish multiple directions.
All right, tip number two is to watch your sonar, and if you're not seeing either bait or fish, don't stay too long. If there's no fish there, you're gonna know, because our sonar now is so good. You can see bait fish, you can see fish if they're around, and if it's a blank screen, you want to make a big move. On Lake Superior, there's a lot of water, and the fish can be miles and miles from where you're at, so don't be afraid to make a big jump, set up again, and give it a try. Typically, small moves on Lake Superior don't produce a whole lot unless you're on very, very tight, specific structure. If you're just fishing open basin or a shoreline, a lot of times it's best to make a big move like 5+ miles and try some other completely different area, or head out and try a completely different depth.
All right, tip number three, this really comes into play when you're setting up especially, is you usually want to go with the wind. It's a lot easier to maneuver your boat when you're going with the wind and set your whole spread out before you start doing a lot of turning. Another tip within that one is to use your bow mount trolling motor, set it on a course heading to help keep yourself straight, so that as you're setting lines and getting your planer boards out, getting your downriggers out, you don't have to be concerned about where your boat's headed.
All right, guys, so while we were filming, we had a bite on our 10 color lead core. So this is a great time to kind of go over another tip, which is when and where to use lead core out here on Lake Superior.
So we're using lead core when we're trolling right now for a couple reasons. One, it's a long line that gets your presentation a long ways from the boat. So if the fish are spooking from the boat, this is a great idea. And also the lead core just gets your presentation down to where the fish are. 10 color lead core is actually 300 feet long, because each color on this lead core is 30 feet long. And just for reference, each color gets you down about 5 feet. So we're targeting about 50 feet down with this lure right now. So another tip when you're fishing Lake Superior trolling, or trolling anywhere for that matter, you want to fight these fish in slow and steady. You don't want to do a ton of rod pumping or reeling too fast. Slow and steady wins the race.
All right, so that was a great tip. We covered lead core since we hooked a fish on it, and that pretty much explains why and when and where to use lead core. Another great tool up here on Lake Superior is dipsy divers. It doesn't matter what kind of trolling spread you have, you can add dipsy divers, and they will give you the option to run baits at multiple different depths and almost any bait as well. So you can run spoons, you can run flasher flies, you can run plugs, you can run crankbaits, stick baits, almost anything behind a dipsy, and it'll really give you a versatile spread. You can also spread those out to the side a little bit, and you can stack a few of them. It really is a low investment if you want to get started to trolling on Lake Superior.
All right, so another great way to get your lures down to the correct depth is with a downrigger. If you're using downriggers, I like to use the 100-foot rule. If you're putting your bait down 80 feet, you would put it from the downrigger ball back 20. So your line from the spoon or whatever you're trolling to the rigger ball and then up to the boat should add up to 100. So if you were down 50 feet, back 50 feet, down 40 feet, back 60 feet, and so on. And that's the 100-foot rule.
All right, so we kind of covered the three primary methods for getting baits deep. We covered lead core, dipsies, and downriggers. One other way that we fish a lot up here, especially when the water's colder early in the season and late in the season, is just to flat line baits behind boards, and that works really well for stick baits especially, and it's a great way to catch fish that have moved up shallow to take advantage of the food source that's there and the cold water. A lot of these salmon and trout can't handle warm water in the summertime, so they move deeper, but in those cold weather periods they'll move shallow. You get those boards out away from the boat, sometimes run them right up against the shoreline with stick baits, and you can catch a bunch of fish doing that. Now that said, also certain times of year, like right now when you've got a lot of different variations in surface temperatures and temperatures down deeper where fish could be anywhere in the water column, it's a really good idea to mix up all four of those options. Run some boards, run some lead core, run some dipsies, run some, you know, baits down close to the bottom on your downriggers until you kind of figure out where those fish are at, and that's a great way to kind of dial in the depth those fish are at on these days where there's water temps are all available for the fish to use. All right guys, we just hooked a fish on what I mentioned before was kind of an unconventional bait, and it's a brand new bait, just came out, and it looked like it would catch trout, and sure enough we got one hooked on it. So you'll have to wait and see what we caught this fish on.
Pretty guy.
I got nothing. Yeah. Doubled up. There he is. 2 fish on. Nice. This one's on a spoon, and the other one, we'll show you the bait here in a second. Hey, little lake trout boat flip. There you go guys, that's the new Euro Tackle Nage. It swims at really fast speeds and it looks just like a bait fish, and I had a feeling that was going to catch fish, and sure enough we got him. Kyle's hooked up on another fish on the dipsy.
On the rigger.
Oh, doubled up again. Alright guys, so this downrigger in particular has another one of these baits we were talking about that is very unconventional, and you'll see here in a minute exactly how I rigged this up, but I had a feeling this was going to catch fish, and it wasn't down there more than 5 minutes and we got a fish on it. Haha, that's cool. So that right there guys is a swim bait rigged line through. This is something I've been wanting to try for lake trout up here for a while, and well, it seems to work. First time down and we caught a fish within 5 minutes, so we'll definitely be doing some more experimenting with this. If you want to see how to do this, I'll leave a link in the description for a video where I show how to rig these line through with a little grommet in there. But they're great because the bait slides up and away from the fish when you hook them, just like that, and it's got a much better hooking percentage than a jig would. So pretty cool, pretty cool. That was Rapala Crush City Mare 4-inch, and it did the job on that fish. So back in the cooler he goes. Well, that was pretty cool guys. We caught fish on both of the techniques I wanted to try, or both of the baits I wanted to try, and that just goes to show you, if it looks like a bait fish and it'll swim at 2 to 2.5 miles an hour, a lake trout will eat it on a downrigger. So I'm gonna keep experimenting with some new things up in upcoming videos here too, because I just kind of want to see what I can get away with and maybe find a bait that works even better than what people are using conventionally. So pretty cool to catch fish on both of those the first time out, and maybe we'll get a couple more, we'll see. So here's another tip for presentation on Lake Superior. As we all know, Lake Superior can be very, very clear, and you would think that natural colors would be the only thing that would catch fish in Lake Superior. We've found that bright colors often do very, very well in Lake Superior. Bright chartreuses, fire tigers, pinks, reds, greens. For whatever reason, bright colors in this clear water do catch a lot of fish, and sometimes it's best to have a completely painted lure and not have a lot of chrome on it, because the chrome can actually spook fish in a sunny day when you don't have a lot of wind, because it's actually too shiny and it doesn't look natural in the water. So sometimes dull those colors down, sometimes run some really bright ones, and you'll have a good place to start for catching fish on Lake Superior.
So here's a tip on when to come out here and fish. if you only have a little bit of time, say you have 5 hours to go fish, I always try to get out for the dawn bite and try to get out right away in the morning as soon as you can see and have safe light to navigate. A lot of times that best bite is as the sun's coming up and maybe until noon. You can catch fish any time of day out here, but I really like the mornings. And also, obviously on a big body of water like this, you need to be careful of the weather. Look at the weather report and the wind report before you go. Obviously, some days it's just not safe to be out here. I like it to be less than 10 miles an hour wind, but it's good to have a little bit of chop on the water. Sometimes those glass calm days can be tough fishing.
All right guys, here's another great tip. If you're out on Lake Superior and you're trolling, there's a good chance that you're gonna have a fish that's coming into the boat that you're gonna need a long handled net to scoop up. When you got that motor back there and your downriggers and everything, it's hard to get that fish close enough to scoop it with a short handled net. So what I use is a clam Fortis net, and this net is extendable. So we can just loosen this, slide this handle out, and get a nice long net out there so we're able to bag those fish before they can flop off at the boat. So it's a really good idea to bring the proper net. If you just bring your standard walleye net, you're gonna have a really hard time getting those fish in the bag before they're able to flop off or get tangled up in your gear. So I'll leave a link in the description for this net. It's been a really good net for trolling for me. It's got a nice big bag on it and a nice long handle.
So another great tip is don't be afraid to get away from the crowd of boats. This is a huge lake, there's always a good bite going on somewhere, and just because there's a crowd of boats somewhere doesn't mean they're catching fish. So don't be afraid to veer off and go try to find something farther down the shoreline, out deeper, up shallower. It's a great idea to try something different.
So there you have it guys, there's a bunch of tips to hopefully help you get going on Lake Superior, and just know that you're kind of in the zone and you're doing the right thing, and that you're eventually going to get into some fish if you kind of follow those tips that we just gave you. So be safe out there. It's a dangerous lake. Make sure that you do watch that weather. And if you got any value out of this video, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. I've got a lot more videos like this one and a lot more coming. And again, I'll leave links for all this stuff that I talked about in the description so you can pick up any of it very easily there. So thanks for watching guys. Thanks for coming along, Kyle. We'll see you next time. Get hooked up. Surprisingly, Lake Superior can be very clear. That's not surprising. Everyone knows that. So that's a tip. So that's a really good idea. Let's get started. We're going to start with tip number 1. That'd be stupid if we started with tip number 2.
It's kind of clumsy, but
no.
we'll go with it.